My first experience with e-collars was probably in the late 70s. And that was, yeah, it would have been the 70s, because my father was telling me that this dog Tip, this lab, that I'd hunted with many times, actually ate a bird. So this friend of ours, John Newhouse, was, I believe, dove hunting, and he looked over and the dog was eating a bird. And John Newhouse sent the dog to a trainer that used e-collars, and these were back in the day. My dad was like, I don't know if I think that that's appropriate, something like that. And my father really didn't ever use e-collars, and he started coming like later in life, by early 2000s or something. He had come to the conclusion, I'm using e-collars, I'm telling my father there's nothing abusive about it, you just have to use them correctly. But the collar that was used to work with the dog Tip back in the 70s was a big lead acid type collar. It was big battery, and throughout the years they've gotten smaller and smaller. Now, I still own a collar from a Tritronics collar from the late 70s. It's somewhere in there, and it's gigantic. Not the late 70s, it would have been the late 80s, early 90s, and it's huge. It would only be appropriate for a large breed dog. They've made them smaller and smaller. They keep making them smaller and smaller, and this would be an example of a fairly small collar. This you could put on a 5-pound dog, and I put them on 5-pound dogs all the time, and they're gonna get smaller every year. Technology is getting better. The problem with these is energy storage with your battery. Now, I do have more experience with e-collars than most because I've been using them for so long. So, and also I make things, so there's been times in my life where what I'll do is I'll take an old collar, like it doesn't have the feature that I need, and so what I did was I took the contact points from this collar. This is a bark collar, and it's not really a good product, but the thing that I liked about the product is this is a conductive plastic. So I like that, and then I married it into I'm sure I used a Mini Educator, a e-collar Technologies product, and removed these and then married it into the e-collar Technologies product. The other thing that I've been working on with these, I'm not working on these anymore, but the problem is size, and the main factor with the size really is so much. Well, there's a lot wasted. That's what I found out by taking these apart. There's a lot of things that could be done in the designing of the collar, and probably just passing it off to somebody in design that goes to the Kansas City Art Institute and say, we need this smaller. It's a fact, because I found ways that I could definitely make the collar smaller just by design and putting stuff in different areas in the collar itself. There's just waste. There's just a lot of wasted space. But your battery takes up the most space. So at first it was like these lead acid batteries, then it was nickel hydride batteries. You start using lithium, it gets smaller, and they're better products. Now, so this, I'm no longer Frankensteining collars or working on the idea of making a smaller collar, because there's already people that do that for a living. And if somebody wanted to hire me, as a consultant, I would do it. But I have other things that I'm working on, so it's not really at the top of my list. But this product would be an example of a product which is state-of-the-art and an awesome product. This is a micro educator by e-collar Technologies, and it's thought out. It is thought out in that other collars you know, really don't have these features where it's like you put the strap on this way or the strap on this way, depending on like the dog's neck. You know, some dogs, little small dogs, have real short necks, so maybe you could hang it here. But the thing that I really want to talk about in this video is these, and these are titanium contact points. And titanium is an awesome product, and I'm not really sure why they are not just including these with every collar, because these dogs don't have like an allergic reaction to. There's the advantage of the plastic contact points, and that's why I was Frankensteining this into something else, was that the dogs don't have like an allergic reaction to them, so that like they can stay on longer. There's no problems. Think of it as like the human being that buys cheap jewelry. These cost a little bit more. So the problem being that if you have, where's stainless steel? Here's some stainless steel contact points, right? These have nickel in them, and dogs have an allergy to nickel, some worse than others. And I would say 50% of the dogs have sort of like an allergy to nickel where it causes a problem. So you have to use these. So if you're going to get an e-collar, you might as well just buy the extra contact points, the titanium, just to alleviate the problem. Now, when I send a dog home, they're e-collar conditioned, I'm going to have these on there because I don't want the owner to have any problems. And one of the main problems with e-collars is that the owner stops using them. It's a big problem because the dog's going back functioning real good, and then they're like, oh, well, I don't need to keep putting this on the dog. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. And these should stay on, the collar should go on the dog until the dog's fully trained, and then you put them on, you put the collar on for another 6 months, because the dog's collar wise. So your dog's general behavior is gonna be better if you're more consistent with the collar. If you're not consistent with the collar, then you might end up like just putting the collar on for the rest of the dog's life. That's okay too. That's okay. But I mean, if you're really trying to do it right, keep putting the collar on consistently, get the dog fully trained, and then you keep putting the collar on for another 6 months. They also, well, they used to make them, I don't know if they make them anymore, but they're dummy collars, so it looks like a collar to the dog, so there's no innards or anything, so you could just keep putting that one on and use, that would probably be something a trainer would be more interested in, or somebody with multiple dogs, because your dog's behavior is better with this on, flat out. Now, I know people are thinking shock collar. That is what they were called years ago when I started using them, and that's sort of how they were used. It was about punishment. And that's not how this collar is used. This collar, the dog can feel lower than a human can feel it, and you're trying to create an annoyance with the collar. You can use it in punishment fashion, like you screwed up, you're teaching the dog a game, and there must be sort of consequences to the game for the dog to really pick up on it. They also can be used if your dog is like, say you're in the city and it goes for chicken bones on the street, bingo. Your dog has pica and eats non-food items, right here. This should be on your dog just for the rest of its life. This is a quality tool. Now, they sell e-collars on Amazon, and that's a big mistake. Those collars you can feel on the lowest setting. This thing, you start feeling it, these probably around 10, and it goes to 100. 10, 50, the mini educator's about 15 a human can start feeling it, so we use them 15 and below. And God, my fingernails, I can't find my fingernail clipper. I look like a werewolf or something. Should see my toes. I sometimes wonder. And so 15 15 and below for a mini educator, and a micro educator like 10 and below. So that's where you're using it. You want to think of the e-collar as you use it for conditioning, not punishment. In other words, you're using this when the dog is being good. That's generally how I'm using it. I'm not saying I won't use it if the dog's screwing up. I will. But they're used when the dog is being good. If you think something about a dog, we have 4 million dogs dying every year because of improper training, no training, or lack of training. 4 million. And there's also this arrogance, man. I run across this all the time. Even a dog that I've worked with recently, and I was talking to the person when they first got the dog, an old friend, and he was joking, saying, I'm an expert. I'm just like Jared Kushner. I've read 26 books. Like, he's joking, but he's also really thinking that he's going to get someplace with the dog. And that's a huge mistake. I see it in male and female owners. There's like this arrogance, like, oh, I can train the dog, but usually they end up having problems. Dogs on the bed, all these things that screw up the status of the dog, that just confuses the dog. And then all of a sudden the dog's an adult, it's fighting, whatever, it's terrible on a leash, it gets hit by a car because it can't heel. And the owner always resorts to either the dog is stupid, or I gave that dog everything and that's the thanks that I get. Something like that. These are awesome tools, but you don't want to be dialing it up. It's not about punishment, it's about conditioning. It's about teaching the dog to work quicker and to be compliant. It's not about, you're fucking up, dog, I'm gonna zap ya. That's not it. That's not it. We're talking about years of you know, studying dogs using and animals using these products, and it really does. It works effective without like having to stress out the dog. You don't want to dial it up, because if you dial it up, it causes excitement, and excitement is the point where all dogs make a mistake. They bark, lunge, bite, or just don't listen. If you had this on a dog and the dog was chasing a deer, you wouldn't want to dial it up. You wouldn't want to do that, because it's going to cause more excitement, and it's really, the next time the dog sees a deer, it's going to go after it. So if you come across a bird dog trainer that says something like that, or any dog trainer that says that, it's nonsense. If your dog is taken off after the deer, you need to do more yard work. That's it, cut and dry. You haven't done the proper amount of yard work. This is not a panacea for dog training. This is helpful. Now, I'm going to use a dog that I'm working with right now, and that would be Toto. And Toto has an allergy to nickel. So if you have those stainless steel points on, and say you forget and leave it on overnight, you might see real irritation on the skin. It can't be laying on the skin that long. So this gives you a bigger window to screw up. And yes, I'm a human being. There's trainer error, there's human error. And so I took it off Toto as soon as I saw in the morning, and I saw irritation. I'm like, fuck, she's got a nickel allergy. So while these were coming, the contact points, I didn't have the collar on her, or I was using just a vibrate collar. You know, and a vibrate collar sort of looks like this. It's thinner, but it has no contact points. It just vibrates. And, you know, I knew that the dog wasn't going to function as well. It's a fact. The vibrate function, this collar has it too, does have its purpose, but don't discount this. And a lot of times the vibrate function causes too much excitement. It's too raw. This is like floating in the background. You condition, you know, really low level. If you're working with a dog trainer and they have to do with that IACP, I'd be very leery of anybody that belongs to the IACP, because I've heard people that are associated with the IACP high up. I can think of this one dude's name who bonks dogs. Bonking is essentially hitting a dog with a rolled up towel. saying dial it up. That is not the approach. In New York City, I've worked with several dogs that this other IACP person worked with, and he couldn't get the Akita to do anything. And when the Akita came to me, it was so, it looked like he just put the collar on high and just started zapping the dog. The dog will shut down. I got the dog to do everything. Sit down, whoa, here, heel, kennel. This guy thinks that the answer is the dog is not being responsive to dial it up. So I warn you that just because somebody says that they have experience and they know what they're doing does not necessarily mean that it's true. And if they're associated with something like that, like this fake thing that like sort of gives because it's a organization, and sort of looks like the person has a credential, which you can buy into that organization, so you can put it on your website, IACP, International Association of Canine Professionals. That's what it is. So you buy into that so that you can put that on your website or whatever. If the people that are high up in that organization are not qualified, the people lower in that organization are not going to be qualified. And it's generally like dog whisper people, and then dog whisper people that start like putting e-collars on dogs to like force them into submission. That's not the approach. That is not good. That is not good. You should, in most cases, you're going to see that the dog, I'm talking about myself, most cases I see that the dog responds to anything under a human can't feel, or some dogs that are real high drive, it might be a little bit above. But generally speaking, I would say 95% of the dogs are under where a human can feel it. Some, and usually it's a dog that somebody else has put an e-collar on at some point. See the problem? You're wasting your money. You send your dog off to sit means sit. By the way, I was told by my friend Robert Masters, he's qualified to use an e-collar. You could call him. He's in North Carolina. But he told me that he was communicating with somebody that worked at Sit Means Sit, and they have this thing of like, we can train your dog to be off leash in a week. And talking, this is hearsay, but he said talking to this one dude, and I know who the dude is, he told Robert that their method was turn the e-collar up real high, almost to the point where the dog is just about to make a vocalization, and just start pulling it into heel. Once it gets into heel, let off the collar. So they're selling you this, that yeah, we can get your dog off leash in a week. Okay, but is the dog so heated up that it's afraid to move? It's just not a good approach. You get what you pay for. You get what you pay for with dog training. You want some kind of rush, you want somebody to rush and get it done real cheap. That's what you get. You get real cheap, and the dog isn't properly conditioned. It's bullshit. People have unrealistic expectations about dogs. Like, oh, the dog barks. I'm just going to go get a bark collar, and I'm going to put the bark collar on the dog. And a bark collar would be like this, but it would have a sensor. So either the sensor is going to hear or it's going to feel the vibration. So when the dog barks, it's going to zap the dog. That's not good. That can cause more problems and make it so that the dog barks more. So if you're going to use a bark collar, the dog should first be e-collar conditioned with something like this. You can't do this on your own. Don't even think that you can. And if you're going to take that approach, like this arrogance, like, oh, it's simple. It's not. It's not simple. It's not simple. And you experimenting on your dog is fucked up. And that's what a lot of people do. They just experiment. If you bought the dog and then you don't want to pay to have somebody get it trained properly, you're a fool. And by the way, I would like to talk about a statistic, and it's, you could ask any dog trainer this, that people that like get a dog from an animal shelter, they generally won't spend money on training. It's like they want the dog, but they don't want to train it, or that if they train it, it's really this half-ass thing, or they send it to like a dog walker that does dog, you know, it says that they train dog, you know, it's like that. It's bullshit. I find that most of the dogs that I work with are pure breeds. This is just a fact. And the owner is willing to look at training as an investment. And that's how everybody should be looking at it. You love the dog, but the dog doesn't function for you. Like, you can't walk the dog at heel. That if you tell the dog to pick up a dumbbell, it won't pick it up. Can't do anything. Like, love is not enough for the dog. I see it all the time. I see it on Instagram, Facebook, wherever. The person that loves their dog, but they just love it the wrong way. It's up on a bed, it's, you know, eating sticks and mud. They don't care. It's all about love. They have this thing in their head that they've been sold, which is an unrealistic, you know, that the dog is like this morphed little human being. It's nonsense. The positive reinforcement trainers have sold this to the American public, yet we have 4 million dogs dying every year. Dogs that come here and do a board and train with me, I haven't really heard of any that have been put down. Maybe some have been put down, but that's not really the case. One, because if a person spends that type of money getting the dog trained, they look at it like, I spent all this money, it's an investment, I keep up with it. And also, with somebody like me, you spent the money with me, I'm going to explain to you that training is the lifetime of the dog. You don't get the dog trained and then it's over. You get the dog trained so you can work with the dog for the rest of its life. And why wouldn't you when they enjoy it so much? If you got a dog just to like, what? Like, you know, sit around and get excited when you get home, that's pathetic. That is pathetic. That's as pathetic as the people. I've seen this is a phenomenon I've seen so many times throughout the years, is that like a couple, they're gonna have a baby and then they get a puppy, or they get the puppy and then like, you know, 9 months later they're having the baby. What in the fuck? There's no logic with a person like this, and you cannot deal with them. They're not thinking clearly. They have some kind of oxytocin surge, so they're like, we feel great. We're gonna have a baby, and the baby should grow up with a dog. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. The only time that would not be a nonsensical thought is if it's a dog trainer. And dog trainers with kids, they spend the time with the dog. They're religious about like getting the dog trained and then working with the kid, even when it's 2 years old. That's a different story. But the person that has, you know, has a high IQ, so they think, oh, I'm smart, I can train a dog. You're out of your fucking mind. People are out of their minds. IQ has nothing to do with dog training. Dog training has more to do with like a person that's disciplined. How disciplined are you? Doesn't have anything to do with, oh yeah, I'm a doctor or a lawyer, whatever you have done, whatever, you know, educational accomplishments you have under your belt or don't have under your belt, have nothing to do with dog training. Dog training is a lot of muscle memory. It's about being repetitive, and it's about the owner being very consistent and having discipline. There are times that you're not going to want to work the dog, but you switch gears. Like, say there's a lot of snow on the ground. So if your dog's trained properly, you could be in one room, be sending your dog upstairs to go to the kennel, call the dog back down to heel, and then send it back up to the kennel again. And do that, some repetitive training. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. Like, even putting a leash on a dog seems to be difficult for people. They get the puppy and they think the puppy's supposed to roam around the house, and then they start having problems. The puppy's going towards windows and barking at people on the street. It doesn't make any sense. Oh yeah, what do? The dog's barking at the window. Get it away from the fucking window. Put it in a crate. Use a crate properly. By the way, crates, all dogs should have a crate their entire life. Their entire life. It isn't about like, oh, I've seen it before. I'm thinking about this Bouvier that ate came over to my house throwing stuff up. Other dogs that I know that have come over to my house, and then they're throwing stuff up because the owner doesn't want to use a crate. So they're willing to risk the dog's life. The dog acquires pica, and then, it's eating panties, socks, whatever, toys, and they're letting it roam around the house doing whatever, and it doesn't seem like it's an issue for them. I won't work with people. If the dog comes over, and they'll keep it in their stomach. This is true. They'll keep it in their stomach, and 2 days later, they're like throwing it up. Like, they're not like us. So if they wouldn't throw it up, it can become a blockage, and then the dog's gonna die. Like this nonsense of not using a crate. Like, you're the good owner because you don't use a crate. You're a bad owner and an idiot. That's it. You're leaving the house and you don't put your 4-year-old dog in the crate? Why? Your dog likes the crate. You want it to protect your house? I don't want my dogs to protect my house. Take it. Take the shit. Don't fuck with the dogs. And by not using the crate, your dog is going to jump into this territorial shit and become aggressive. And aggression is absolutely the most common behavioral problem with dogs. But if you don't use a crate and you're leaving the house and shit, another problem that's not the most common, but really far up there, that would be separation anxiety. That's caused by the overly loving owner. Oh, they're leaving. Oh, I gotta pet the dog. Okay, I'll be right back. It's those salutations coming and going. They fuck the dog up. And they don't use a crate properly. And when the dog gets separation anxiety, to get it better, you have to use a crate. You have to start using a crate properly. If you can't watch that puppy or that dog that is untrained, you have it in a crate. There's so many problems that arise from like just not using a crate. You can't watch the dog, just have it go in a crate. They don't look at it as jail. That's your own stupid mind. They don't care. Do you know why we know that crates and using them with dogs doesn't affect the dog negatively? Because we look at racing greyhounds. Racing greyhounds are crated for 22 hours out of the day, and the other 2 hours they're just worked with by professionals. They're couch potatoes. There's no psychological damage to the dog, one, because dog psychology, that's a term that Sherry made up, I believe, for Cesar Millan. I think Sherry Lucas, I'll ask her, but I think she's the one that wrote all that shit. But that is a description of like the psychology of man working with dogs. That's not, it sounds like there's this implication that the dog has like, psychological stuff like we do, and they don't. They don't have, they don't have suicide, they don't have depression, they don't have that. And you're gonna say, oh, my dog gets depressed. You're depressed. I've never met a depressed dog. I can amp that dog up real quick, so it's not depressed. It's around you. You're projecting upon the dog. There's never have I seen a depressed dog, a dog with clinical depression, anything like that. It's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. They don't have any of that. They don't have schizophrenia. They don't have any of that crap that we have. Their brain functions unlike ours. We ponder thought. The dog responds. That's it. When I take a dog, this is true, when I take a dog for a board and train, do you think it misses the owner? Not even slightly. The dogs, stress-free when it's with me, and it's not thinking about the owner until it sees or smells the owner. And remember, eyesight is not their number one sense, it's scenting. So when they smell the owner, then they're, oh look, it's that person again. And then they might get excited, but if it's with me, it's been, no, I don't want you excited, sit. Having the excited dog and giving treats is foolish. You just exacerbate the whole thing. You don't want excitement. You don't want excitement. A UPS just made my dogs bark. But that's the point where all dogs fuck up. There's a UPS guy delivering a package, the dogs barked. There was an excitement, and they barked. Have your dog as calm as possible. There's tools that can be used to help you train the dog and keep the dog trained for its lifetime. This would be one of them. But you don't buy this thing and just strap it on your dog and think I'm going to zap the dog when it fucks up. You're just going to confuse the dog. But to the bullshit that is put out about like e-collars, it's bullshit. And there's countries where like you can't use these and you can't use lots of the tools. And those are the countries where we see so many dogs that are just put down. It's ridiculous. It is. It's ridiculous. It's not the dog training tool. Even if you take in the consideration of food trainers, I see more abuse with food than just about any other tools. It's just really common. I train with no food. Why are you going to train with food? It's tied into the dog's survival. It isn't going to help. It's going to make things worse. It does. It makes things worse. They start looking at food as like they're conditioned to be excited. Because they're excited, they can't even respond. They're spinning around and you can't tell them what to do. Or you're eating dinner and the dog is sitting next to you drooling, similar to a catatonic state. And if you pick the plate up, the dog tracks the plate. It can't function like that. With a human in a catatonic state, you want them out of that catatonic state as soon as possible. The dog is the same way, and you don't do it by giving the dog the food. You condition that response in. I've heard it a million times, idiots, like, oh, I don't do it very often. You don't have to do it very often. You could do it once every 2 months and the dog will keep doing it. You have to tell the dog to get away from the table, go sit someplace else, and never give it food again. That's the key. Never give it food again. My dad always said to me, he always said this, like, if you want to use a piece of food with the puppy to get it to sit or something, fine, not a problem, but that's not what people do. They just keep doing it and doing it. So the dog associates, the whole thing is like bribery. You're looked at as like in disrespect. The dog thinks you're a joke, that you're a resource for snacks. That's it. People don't do it, and you'll see professional trainers. I think about this guy, Larry. Big Larry, who's just, it's moronic. Just because somebody writes a book doesn't mean that they know what they're doing. But I think about Big Larry and his 4-year-old Malinois or something, like, coming in and spinning in the heel or something, and then he's giving it food. I know so many of these people, he's a balanced trainers even, or they call themselves balanced trainers, but they're unbalanced because they're still using food. I think of this woman in Chicago. It's like same thing, a Malinois. She's still giving it food, thinking that it's going to do the thing better. And I quizzed her. I said, why do you still give your dog food? Why are you still using the fanny pack with your dog? And this dog trainer said this, because I think she's happier when I give her the food. Happier? That's foolish. You know what they're happy? They're happy when they're working. They're happy doing the command. They're happy when you say, good boy or good girl. You don't have to bring food into it. It's nonsense. These are good tools. If you're having problem with your dog, or you had problem with your dog in the past that you were seeing irritation on the neck, it could either be because the collar's too tight, It could be because the collar's too loose, or it could be the contact points are stainless. So switch up to titanium contact points, make sure your tension's good, and they do make a collar that's quick release with bungee so that it keeps the tension on there proper. They also make something here, I don't have it, but they're called comfort pads, and those come in titanium too. And comfort pads just give a larger surface, so instead of 2 contact points there would be 4. And if you're using those type of contact points, whatever level you were working with the dog, because it is more metal, you might have to dial the collar up, I don't know, 3 or 4, something like that. I'm talking about an E-Collar Technologies product, because it's like, think of it as like when I talk about amperage. Like if you have like thicker wire, it can hold more amps. If you have thinner wire, it can hold less amps. So think of it as like a glass of water. Like a glass of water that is half full. Do you see what I'm saying? You could fill it all the way up. It can hold more water. So the thicker wire can hold more amps, okay? So the same would be true if you have more metal on here. It's going to be holding more of a, you know, the charge is going to have to dissipate throughout the areas of metal. So you're going to have to amp it up a little bit. Oh, one other thing while I'm on the subject of e-collars. If you have a dog that has like real thick, curly hair, it could be a Labrador too, but say you take it swimming, these are waterproof. But take the collar off after you're done, wash the dog off and wash the collar off, because creeks, and like if you have a hunting dog, like a water dog, and it's in like a lot of cattails where there's a lot of waterfowl and stuff, there's high bacteria count in that water. So if this is on here, even though that's titanium contact points, if there's a little bit of movement, you could start having problems. So use the collar, you can use the collar, it's fine, but then take the collar off, wash the dog off, wash this off, so that you don't get any problems. The problem is, if you have problems with the collar, you can't use it. And like I said earlier in the video, it's about consistency. So then, like if they've got an infection or something there, you'd have to put, you know, leave this off, it needs to get air. If you do see that you left it on and it has titanium contact points, you really just take it off for a few hours, give the neck some air, and then it can go back on. You also have the option of putting it on the other side or up top, but moving around. This would be in an inappropriate spot to put it, because when the dog walks, it's going to move, sort of. You want it up close to the ear, behind the ear like this. So you could move it to the other side. If you're using one of these, keep an eye on the dog's neck. If you have stainless steel contact points, the dog might be fine. You might not have to buy these, but if you love your dog and you want your dog to have the best, switch to titanium contact points. E-Collar Technologies has these, Dog Trail probably has these. I recommend this brand of collar, by the way. E-Collar Technologies, they make an awesome product. It can be used lower than a human can feel it, and that's what you should be using. If you bought garbage on Amazon from China, put it in your hand, turn it to the lowest setting, can you feel it? There you go, you bought garbage.